The story begins in Southampton County, Virginia, during the early 1800s. A young boy named Nat lives on a plantation. Unlike most slaves, he can read and write, something extremely rare at the time. His owner's wife discovers this and begins teaching him from the Bible, believing that religion will keep him obedient. Nat's father, Isaac, is a proud man who refuses to fully accept slavery. One night, while trying to find food for his starving family, Isaac is caught by slave catchers. Instead of surrendering, he fights back and escapes. Before disappearing into the night, he tells young Nat something powerful: "You are meant for something greater." Nat doesn't fully understand those words yet, but they will stay with him forever. Years pass. Nat grows into a strong young man and becomes a Baptist preacher among the slaves. His owner, Samuel Turner, realizes this can be profitable. Instead of letting Nat preach freely, Samuel starts renting him out to nearby plantations. Nat is forced to travel from farm to farm, preaching sermons meant to convince slaves to remain obedient to their masters. At first, Nat believes he is doing God's work. But during these trips, he begins to witness things he can never unsee. Nat finds a small piece of happiness. He falls in love with a slave woman named Cherry. The two secretly marry in the woods, surrounded by fellow slaves. For a brief moment, life almost feels normal. They even start building a family together. But slavery doesn't allow happiness to last for long. Nat's preaching tours continue, but each new plantation reveals even worse brutality. On one farm, he watches as a slave is tortured so badly that his teeth are knocked out and food is forced down his throat with a funnel. On another plantation, a slave woman is forced into a master's bedroom against her will. Her husband asks Nat a heartbreaking question: "Where is God now?" Nat has no answer. For the first time in his life, his faith begins to shake. Then something happens that completely changes Nat. One day, Cherry is attacked and brutally beaten while alone in the woods. When Nat finds her lying injured and terrified, something inside him finally breaks. Now he begins reading the Bible differently. Instead of passages about obedience, he starts seeing stories about justice and liberation. One day Nat speaks out against the treatment of the slaves. For this, he is publicly beaten and humiliated. The punishment is meant to break him, but instead, it does the opposite. Now Nat knows something for certain: nothing will ever change unless someone fights back. Quietly, Nat begins speaking with trusted slaves. Only the ones he knows he can trust. Late at night, in hidden places, they start discussing a dangerous idea. Rebellion. Not just escape, not just survival, but an actual uprising. Many of the slaves are afraid. But after everything they've suffered, some begin to believe him. And slowly, a small group begins preparing for something that could change everything. Nat knows that once they begin, there is no turning back. Because if they fail, the punishment will be brutal. But if they succeed, they might finally taste freedom. And so the men prepare themselves for the moment that will soon shake the entire region. A rebellion that will go down in American history. But what Nat and his followers don't yet realize is that the path they are about to take will trigger consequences far greater than they ever imagined. And once the first move is made, the entire South will be forced to respond. Nat Turner started as a preacher forced to control slaves with religion. But after witnessing unimaginable cruelty, he became something else entirely. A man willing to risk everything, to fight for freedom. And the rebellion he was about to begin would become one of the most famous slave uprisings in American history. But that is where we'll stop the story for today.